So I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land I'm speaking from today and pay my respect to the elders past and present. My name is Aditya. My pronouns are he and him. And the title of today's talk is How Do I Say Gay in Hindi, the language of the queer in India? So while I will be describing my experiences as an out gay man who grew up in India and studied in India, I would also like to bear in mind that we are an NLP audience. So it would be interesting to look at the language phenomena in India. About me, I was born and raised in Mumbai. My PhD thesis was titled Investigations in Computational Sarcasm. Based on my experiences as an out PhD student and my PhD thesis, I also presented a TEDx talk titled Detecting Sarcasm, Combating Hate. I moved to Sydney in 2018 for a postdoc on health informatics, and I'm currently a machine learning engineer at Notif in Australia, which is a super cool meeting note taker working on meeting analytics. So the title of today's talk is Language of the Queer in India, which I have abbreviated as Loki. Young urban LGBTQ Indians discover their identities via films, TV shows, or documents in English. As a result, many are not familiar with enough LGBTQ related words in Indian languages. So when an Indian person comes out to their mother, they could say, Ma, main gay hoon, where the person has reused the English word gay while saying, Mom, I'm gay. So Loki is essentially the words used to describe or self describe LGBTQ people in Indian languages. What I'm really trying to do is I am trying to view a culture's perception of LGBTQ people through words in its languages. And while we are an international audience where not all of you are familiar with Indian languages, I think it would be really cool if during the course of this talk, you think if you have seen similar words or categories of words in your languages, because there is so much similar between all of us. As a brief introduction to multilinguality of India, India has 22 plus official languages. Some of the top spoken languages are shown in the table here, and I speak the two languages that are in bold, that is Hindi and Marathi. As you see in the map on the right, these languages are geographically distributed in different parts of India. But these are essentially the predominant languages, not the only language spoken in the region. So Loki, I view Loki in three categories. The first category is social jargon. The second category is slurs. And the third category is pop culture references. So I will essentially take you through these categories, describe some words in these categories while also highlighting my experiences hearing these words during the course of my journey. So let's look at part one, which is social jargon. Trans communities have been a part of traditional stories and folk tales in India. As a result, several social communities have popular names in Indian languages. For example, several transgender communities, primarily trans women communities, are identified in folktales and social circles. They are significantly marginalized socially as well as economically, and often relegated to certain so-called traditional professions. Some of these transgender communities are Jogappas, Aravani, Kinnara, and Hijras. You see Jogappas on the right, who are a community of trans women who perform musical concerts at religious gatherings. And so when I came out to my family, one of my family members thought that being gay meant being a Jogappa. And so they asked me, so are you going to join the Jogappas and lead a religious life? Because Jogappa was a popular term in their jargon, in their dictionary, they related my gayness with my association with the Jogappa community. The second form of social jargon that one observes in Indian languages is in ancient texts. One of the most popular ancient texts from India is the Kama Sutra, which defines a term called Tritiya Prakriti or Tritiya Panthi. Tritiya means third, and in fact, you'll see the resemblance of tra with three in English. And Prakriti really means nature. So it says that a person's non-binary attributes are essentially their third nature. And you see a picture of people of the third nature community or the Tritiya Panthi community. As a result, because this term is popular in Sanskrit, when the Supreme Court of India recognized transgenders as a separate gender in all government forms, they actually referred to them as third gender. This came from a popular Sanskrit text, as we see here. The second kind of ancient texts are the medical texts, which have been a part of traditional knowledge in India. They have been written by Sushruta, whose picture you see on the right from a university in Sydney, and Charaka, who in his book called Charaka Samhita refers to this term as Sanskar Vahi. Sanskar means virtues or refinement, Vahi means carrier. So Charaka says that a queer person is somebody who carries properties of their previous birth. What does this mean? When I actually came out to my friends, one of them asked me, did you become gay because you are Sanskarvahi? That is, you were a woman in your previous birth and you're carrying your womanly attributes, so called womanly attributes, in your current birth, as a result of which you are gay. So, this friend of mine really tried to interpret my gay identity based on what they had heard from their family members, from their culture. And that's really the point I'm trying to make here. Social jargon in the form of academic terms arrived from English, where English terms for homosexual, bisexual, and heterosexual were translated loosely in Indian languages. So the word sexual means lingi, and this was used to form the word sama lingi, where sama and same are essentially the same word, itara lingi, which is heterosexual. So while Samalingi is one of the most popular terms in Hindi or Marathi for gay people, when I was coming out to my mother, the conflict really was that I did not want to tell them I am homosexual. I wanted to tell her that I was gay. Because as you can imagine, there is a subtle nuanced difference between the two. I did not have a word for myself to refer to myself as gay, although there was a word for homosexual, which is samalingi. The second kind of words are slurs. And this section is based on an article which I wrote for a magazine. So slurs, there are lots of slurs across lots of Indian languages, and these slides cover some of them. And one common category of slur is slurs derived from gender. In a very uncreative manner, many Indian languages just use the word for woman, add a suffix ly at the end of it, and that becomes a swear word. So baila, mauga, maya all have the same form. The first part of the word refers to a woman and the second part is li. So by referring to a man as a womanly man, you are trying to put them down. And in fact, baila is a, a word which I grew up hearing from my bullies throughout my childhood. The second form of slurs, which I think is very unique to Indian languages, is to assign unexpected attributes and to call somebody by that. So a gay man can be called chikna, good, or meetha, where chikna means that they are hairless or smooth. Jaggery is a form of sweet that you see on the right. So it is a sugarcane based sugar. So, because if a person speaks rather sweetly for a man, they are often bullied and mocked by being called good or jaggery. And that is also a word which I have heard for myself. When a person has attributes which are not considered manly enough, there's this Hindi word called pavali kam, which really means a quarter less, which means you are incomplete. You are supposedly an incomplete man. This really refers to the cultural perception of LGBTQ people in the region. The third form of slurs are slurs derived from sexual acts. So you have lots of words referring to gandu, bondu, gandua, where gand and bond all refer to asshole. And as you can imagine, I have heard the word gandu, which means the anal receptive partner, several times from my bullies. The third category of words in the language of the queer in India are pop culture references. Because popular culture ideas like movies and TV shows had allegedly queer or queer characters, some of these words slipped into the lexicon of the common person. For example, some allegedly queer celebrities like Karan Johar, Ganpat Patil, and Dilruba Uncle were actually used as words to refer to people who others thought were gay. For example, this is a still from a show called Shriman Shrimati, and the person on the right is Dilruba Uncle. I have been called Hey Dilruba by both my bullies and friends. So although the intent was different in the two cases, because people did not have a word for gay in their language, they used these popular references of people to refer to seemingly queer people around there. Queer characters in films, in Indian films, which are mostly negative. However, there have been some positive portrayals. I wouldn't really call Dostana a positive portrayal because it had straight men featured in the picture there pretending to be gay. However, Dostana brought out the discussion about LGBT people in the in the minds of the so-called common masses of India. As a result, when my then boyfriend and I were trying to board an auto or a tuk-tuk that you see in the picture on the right, the auto driver looked back at us and said, "Hey, you two are Dostana, aren't you?" Because the auto driver did not have a word for gay, he did not know the term gay, Dostana provided him a perspective and a term to refer to us. And he was absolutely cool with us for the rest of our ride. But it was interesting to see how popular culture influenced the language to describe LGBTQ people in India. So really, I looked at the language of the queer in India in three categories: social jargon in the form of trans communities, ancient scriptures, slurs derived from gender, sexual acts, and unexpected attributes, and popular culture references. So while I have still not been able to find a word for gay in my language, how did I find my way? How did I come out to my parents? Because, like I said, I did not want to call myself a homosexual or a samalingi when I was coming out to my mother, because I thought it was too clinical a term and it did not focus on my romantic inclinations towards men. And so when I came out to my mother and my parents, I said, Ai Baba, mi vegra ahe, where vegra means different. So I said, Mom, Dad, I'm different. My mom asked me, what does that mean? Manje? And well, the last one should really be me. I said, Mala mule avartat, muli nahi. I like men, not women. So although I did not have a word, a synonymous word for the word gay in my language, although the label would have helped, I think once I was able to express myself in my language, I did not need a specific noun or adjective to refer to myself. And that's really my perspective of the language of the queer in India. And thank you for the opportunity. And thanks, thanks to all of you for listening patiently. I would really like you to think, how is it in your language? And do you observe these categories or these words in your languages too? Thank you.
Thanks, Aditya. That was truly tremendous. Thank you for taking us on that journey.